Hey photo world, welcome back to another episode here on takeandtalkpics.com. This is another episode from the former podcast. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join the email list. Let's get to that 1,000 subscriber marker so that way I can add a new video every single week. Enjoy. Hey photo world, take a look at takeandtalkpics.com. In fact, subscribe to our newsletter where every week I send you the key moments, the highlights from those 3 episodes for that week. You'll see it by that weekend, so if you can't hit all the episodes, you can at least recap on what we talked about on the show. Just hit the subscribe button in the sidebar on takeandtalkpics.com. Hey photo world, takeandtalkpics.com. I'm Rob Kruger. Here we are on episode 35 featuring photographer Kevin Kuster.
But that's just it. There's the whole creative part of it, right? Then there's the whole business part of it. Then there's the whole marketing part of it.
Hey photo world, today's featured guest is Kevin Kuster. Kevin, are you ready to rock?
I am. Thanks
awesome. Yes, absolutely. We're welcoming you here at Take and Talk Pics, and Photo World is excited to learn more about you and what you do. But Kevin is not only a photographer, he's an educator and an entrepreneur as well. Kevin thrives on the opportunities social media offers, and as the CEO of #JJ, the largest Instagram community with over 640,000 followers, he has proven his methods. He is also a contributing writer for theappwhisperer.com and has been featured at iPhone Photography School, DP Connect, Passion Passport, and Instagrammers.com, just to name a few. Kevin, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Well, I've shared very little about you and even less about your photography, but could you take this moment to introduce yourself further to Photo World and let us know what you have going on?
Sure. So I've been involved with photography since basically high school. But I guess one of the things that you didn't mention, which is totally fine, is my first job right out of school was I was hired by Playboy Magazine, and I wound up working at Playboy for 18 years. And eventually worked my way up to be the senior photo editor and managing content producer for Playboy. So my career initially, I started as a graphic designer and art director. And my career took me not really consciously, but I just moved into photography. As an art director, I was always on set and collaborating with the various photographers and artists. And more my career just went that way. So I was really kind of like, as I described to people, they're like, well, what is a photo editor, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't get that concept. And it's basically someone, photo editor, photo producer is there to collaborate. I kind of tell people it's kind of like an architect, right? You're the guy who designs everything and says, okay, this is what the house is going to look like. So I'm going to hire this carpenter. I'm going to hire this, tile person. I'm going to hire this interior decorator, and then you oversee everything. So from that standpoint of view, it was an amazing education process for me. And I would say, probably the greatest part about that job is I didn't do the photography. I was collaborating with the photographers and the directors of photography. So I had the opportunity to be on set and observe thousands of different photographers and how they approached their work, how they ran their set. And that was the single greatest learning experience I had.
Awesome. We are off to a great start sharing stories, and I really, really appreciate that being a part of the show. We love to dive in deep and get the background. So before we get deeper into your story and your journey as a photographer, can you share with Photo World something that keeps the inspiration going for you? Is there a quote or a mantra that you tend to live by to keep you inspired on a daily basis?
Yeah, I would say, it sounds very cliche, but the thing that I think of that has kept me motivated, I would say, really in the last couple of years, because there was a time there where I was very burned out on photography. Um, but the biggest thing now is when people say, what's your favorite picture? And it's kind of cliche to say it, but it's like my next one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I always feel like you never get it 100% right. There's like a handful of photos that I can look back. And I remember early in my career, I heard a National Geographic photographer saying, "It's like, hey, I shoot, 5, 10, 15, 20,000 photos in a year. And if I get 2 or 3 that I'm really happy with, that's a great year."
Yeah.
And I feel like that too, where there's some images where I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good, but I didn't get it. So it's like, maybe I'll get it right on the next one.
The greatest thing about those cliche quotes and ideas is there's a lot of truth behind them. And I think if we have, a point where we go, oh, we know our greatest picture, then you're settling and you're not actually striving to achieve more out of your career or your life or whatever the case might be. So
Yeah.
that push, always looking ahead, is an awesome way to go about doing things. So I think it's really great.
Thanks.
So we kind of covered this in your introduction a little bit about falling into photography as your start, but was there something that really kicked it off where you said, I'm picking up a camera and I'm going to take this as a career?
Well, again, in terms of actually, that's the thing that's interesting, in terms of actually picking up the camera. So you have to understand, like when I came into Playboy, I was, 22 years old. And, I knew right away that I was interacting with, and it's going to sound strange, but I was interacting with, photo heroes, people that were, when I started, to call yourself a photographer was a really big deal. To have that title of I'm a photographer,
Mm-hmm.
there was an aura to them. So I would never call myself a photographer. I took pictures, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because these guys were legends, and they really were. These were the guys who wrote some of the rules and broke them. And so for me, I don't think I really embraced, to be really honest with you, I don't think I really embraced calling myself a photographer. I would say to say that I was comfortable enough saying I'm a photographer was probably about, I would say I was probably at Playboy for maybe 15 years before
Wow.
I then really said, yeah, I'm a photographer.
Yes.
I was always a photo editor. I was a photo producer. I was a content producer, but I wouldn't call myself a photographer. I had too much respect for that title.
That's the word I was thinking the whole time, because I feel very similar. I still grew up with film, and then when I started shooting was in film. And I think that was the difference. Once we jumped to digital, everybody started throwing it around like it's no big deal to be a photographer. But I kind of always had this respect that you have to earn it. And the only person who calls you that is yourself. You can't get a degree. You can't get a certificate. There's no picture you can make that's going to say you're a photographer. You kind of have to get to a certain point with yourself and knowing that that is the case. And it took me a long time before I even allowed that to be okay, fully pursuing it and wanting
Sure.
that to be the case. So I think photo world, you have to respect it still and understand that just because you can take pictures doesn't mean you're a photographer yet, depending on your level. And if you're there, go out and tell those newer folks that they need to respect it also. Keep carrying the word.
Agreed.
Kevin, can you share with Photo World a time where you had to learn the hard way? A failure moment, something that just didn't go right according to plan, and you're better for it now, but it just didn't work out at the time.
A failure. Gosh, I wouldn't know. I don't know how to answer that, but I will tell you kind of what kind of came into my mind is, um, I always felt like when I was a producer, right? My boss gave me. I had 2 bosses that were amazing. One was Jeff Cohen, and the other one was Gary Cole, the director of photography at Playboy, where they would just be like, Here's the deal. You own the project. You own every bit of it. You decide who you're going to hire, where you're going to go, what you're going to spend. So all of the success is yours, but also all of the failure is yours. And that was really intimidating, but incredibly liberating. And what I found, and this is very much the case with my photography, and I've seen it with people that are incredibly successful, is that there is no, how do I say, onset, there is no. It's like, I feel like it's akin to like planning for the D-Day landing, right? That you've got all this stuff packed, you've got this whole schedule, you've got this, set of things that you're going to do in your mind. But the minute you hit the beach, everything gets thrown out the water, right?
Yeah.
That you have to adapt, you have to improvise, you have to overcome right there. But had you not done that planning, you wouldn't be able to make those changes and those adjustments. And there were times where, so if I talk about failure, there were some times where it was like my boss would be like, yeah, I don't like the images. And I would be like, okay, well, tell me why. And it didn't necessarily, I was always disappointed, right? You want your client to like your images, but there were times where I would be like, they're like, hey, I don't like it. And I would be like, well, I disagree. And not confrontationally, but it was just a creative choice difference, right? But then there was times where we would create stuff and I would go into his office. I'm like, yeah, we didn't get it. It's not there. And he's like, well, let me take a look at it. And then he'd come into my office. He's like, you're totally wrong. He's like, I love this stuff. So I don't feel like I've ever felt like that was 100% failure, because I'm just one of those people that you always look at it as like, this might not be very successful, but what do you take away from it and learn that then makes it successful?
Right. No, that's a perfect ending to that question, because the way I started is focusing more on the idea that it's a learning moment than a failure moment, but it helps us get into a right place with it. And it's weird when we're shooting, we kind of get those days where we feel we're on and we got it, and other people disagree. And other days we just don't feel very on, and it's, nothing's working out, and others are just blown away. So, I mean, it happens to all of us. And the one thing that I took away and related to, for my own photography, being a wedding photographer, that's very different. But what I related to was the fact that there's all this planning that goes into it. You work with your clients, making sure you're on the same page, and you get there, and 100 different things go wrong. And I try to prepare my clients for that ahead of time, just saying, give me all the details, that's great. But realistically, if I have the start time, a few names, and a location, the rest of the wedding's going to happen and I can follow along. It doesn't matter. You just go, and with that kind of situation, not that that's the best way to run a business, but it's just kind of the mindset you need to have. It's not really how to work. It's just the mindset you need.
Something I'll say to you, though, that I think this kind of adds on to what you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I think you find out when someone knows how to take pictures and when someone's a photographer, when problems arise.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of people right now, and particularly in the wedding photography business, like, oh, this person's got it's crazy, but they're like, oh, they got a really nice camera, my neighbor, and he's going to shoot the wedding. Okay, that's fine. I mean, and I think in this day and age, and I'm not being cynical, but I think a lot of people can put up a handful of decent looking images, right?
Right.
And represent themselves as a photographer. They're good images. It looks nice, but it's not necessarily very deep. And you can't tell, does this person have any depth? And the average consumer who's hiring a photographer can't tell that either, right? And then all of a sudden, when something goes wrong, inevitably things always go wrong, right? It could be a personality problem. It could be a mixed lighting source problem. It could be, any number of things. That's when you find out, is that person a photographer? Can they adapt? Can they adjust? And can they still record and create amazing moments?
My head is spinning with responses and conversation to have on this, but it'll throw us way off track, so maybe I'll have to leave that to a blog post at a later date. So we're going to move forward. I really appreciate it. It gets me all jazzed up and inspired. But we do have a wide range of photographers listening, and we might have already covered this just a little bit. Can you please share with Photo World one thing that you think would lead to growth and success in their business, regardless of their current level?
Yeah. I'm a big believer now in, I've gotten to a point in my life after doing this for 25 years and dealing with 25 years worth of people and evaluating and seeing a lot of people is this. You know what? The vast majority of the people that are at the top of their game aren't any more talented than you and aren't any more talented than the people listening. But the people that are at the top of their game work incredibly hard. They never stop. They're constantly pushing. They're constantly trying, and they're putting in the time. You know, I just really, really, really believe that, you know, there's probably, you know, 1 to 2 to 3% of people that are intrinsically incredibly masters, right? And like someone who was born to play a violin, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's those that just love it so much that the love of it propels them forward to become great.
Yeah, there's something that I haven't brought up on the show in a while, and it's coming off of here, and maybe it's your entrepreneurial side that's inspiring this. There's a book I've read and I've recommended by Stephen Pressfield called Do the Work. You know, it's very simple in its title, but it really breaks down the idea of how difficult it is to go ahead and put in the time, put in the effort, and the payoff that actually comes with it. Because so many people get really close to that turning point where it's going to work out, and they fall short because they give up, they can't do it anymore, they burn out or just don't want to. So if you keep pushing through and working hard, that's it.
I agree. So I just wanted to put one other addendum because I think it's important in terms of the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't have a gig, even if it's not being paid, you know, which I'm a big believer in, get paid for work, right? If someone asks you to do something, get some compensation. I don't care if it's not a big rate, get something. First and foremost, respect your talent enough to do that. Secondly, if you don't have someone who's asking you to shoot something, create projects so you are always shooting. And that means time, talent, and treasure. Put your time into it, your talent into it, and your treasure. Self-finance. Get out there to shoot and to get forward, because you know what? That's the best way to get clients and to keep learning.
Awesome. Excellent. I love it. I love it. Have you had an aha moment during your career? I don't think we have one as photographers, as business owners, but there's usually a few that a light bulb goes off, we make that turning point, and then things really start to change.
I would say two popped to me right away. When I was in high school, there was a very famous Chicago photographer here. I'm not sure, and I hate to say this, I don't know if he's shooting anymore, by the name of Victor Skrebneski. And most people would know Victor's work. Probably he used to do a single light portrait all the time of celebrities, but he also did the Chicago Film Festival posters all the time. And I remember when I saw one of Victor's work, some of his work, and it was all this black and white portrait work, and I just remember thinking how incredibly, like I was probably, I don't know, 14, 15 at the time, and it was the first time like I saw photography and I could see that someone had, and I didn't know this vocabulary, but I could see that someone had used light in a way that they were creating a mood and shaping with that light. And that was like, that like blew me away. And I remember that. And then fast forward to probably 4 years ago, when I was utterly, completely burned out on photography and storytelling, and I literally hated it. So much so that I didn't take pictures at all. Thank God for my son's wife, because otherwise I would have literally no pictures of my child when he was young. I hated it that much. And the aha moment came when I was cruising around on YouTube and I stumbled across this video by a gentleman by the name of Richard Cochi Hernandez, who is a teacher out at Cal Berkeley, and he was showing what he could do. Now, keep in mind, this is 4 years ago. So he was showing what he could do on his iPhone 3GS. And he was doing this incredible street photography. And he was capturing it, editing it, and posting it. And I was like this professional snob, and I was like, there is no way that is a mobile phone. And the next day, I went out and bought a 3GS, and I watched that video, and I'm trying to study what apps is he using and how's he doing this. And it brought all of my passion back for photography, because everything that I had experienced at Playboy that you aspire to, right? Mm-hmm. Celebrities, big money, exotic locations, all of that stuff had burned me out. And now it was just me and this phone that was a good enough camera that I could capture an image at any moment. So I had no excuse not to capture it. And then I could edit it. And I was doing it with my hands, and there was something tactile with it. It felt like I was back in a printing lab again. You know, I wasn't disconnected from a screen, a monitor with a mouse. It was like I was on my hands, and I could do it on the bus or on the train and the plane, right, and just totally creative. And it changed everything for me.
That's cool. I mean, a lot of people get distracted with the idea that cell phone photography is on the rise, and it's, people are trying to replace us with it. But there's nothing wrong with that competition in the world. I don't mind that stuff. I welcome it because it is another tool. It's another camera. It's okay to make that happen. And if it got you re-inspired, photo world, you don't have to bring your DSLR with you everywhere. You have your phone. Don't stop shooting. I mean, just for the very practice of seeing and looking for light,
And what I'll tell you, I'll give you a perfect example. The way I see it right now, I used to be this huge advocate of mobile photography. It kind of felt like a high for me, right? And I've moved off it a little bit, not because it's not amazing, it is. But I just look at it like now I have balance with it, where for me it's akin to, and I'm sorry I use metaphors all the time, but it's like a golfer, right? It's like I have a driver, I have a wedge, I have a putter, and I use them for all different applications. And that's where, for me, I have my iPhone, I have my DSLR, and I have a little point and shoot. And depending upon what the application is and what the usage is, I choose that tool at that time for that project.
For sure, for sure. Similarly to the aha moment, I feel with the I made it moment as a photographer, again, there's not just one. Like you said, the best picture is the next one, or you're striving for it, things of that nature. With an I made it moment, some sort of highlight where it felt like, you know what? Yeah, I really am a photographer. Like maybe it was the time you felt that title was, worth it.
Wow, that's a hard question. So I guess I would say this. And I guess it's just popping in my mind, so I'm going to go with it. So recently, I was lucky enough to help develop and be one of the producers for the largest mobile photography gallery show in a major museum. So I collaborated with our Instagram community and the Columbus Museum of Art, which has an incredibly substantial photo archive and collection of images. So they are very photo centered as a museum. And it was really fantastic to be a part of that, not only having my own work hanging there, but just to, from a personal standpoint of view, to have my own work hanging in a major museum, in a collection of an archive of some of the best and greatest artists and fine artists that have ever existed, but also that we created this thing where a lot of other people that never thought they would ever have a photo hanging in a museum had the opportunity to have their work hang in a museum. We had a person flying from Iran. We had a person flying from Sweden. We had a person flying from Brazil. And all of these people flew in because they felt exactly like me. They're like, when will I ever have my photo hanging in a major museum?
Right.
And it was a fantastic moment.
That's a really, really cool possibility that came out for those who are, aspiring and pursuing it. That, because I think as artists, we always want to be published. We want to get it out there, not for the fame and the fortune, but just for the recognition that we were worth looking at to the masses, and I think that's a really, really cool story there.
Agreed.
So Kevin, during your photography career so far, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, early on, one of the all-time, great Playboy photographers, by the name of Arnie Freitag, I remember asking him early in my career, and he said one of the best things you can do to learn about photography is study painting, and study the Renaissance painters, the masters, because they had to be very, very, very intentional, because they had to paint with light, right? So they had to know in their minds, where is this light source coming, and how would this light source break on this person's face, and what would the shadows look like? And they couldn't manufacture it, right, with strobes and flashes. They had to see it within their mind. And that was one of the ways that I really look at it. Like when I'm creating things, it's like I'm always like, I paint with light. Even so, it's been funny a couple times where I'm like working with like people that are non-photo assistants or non-photography people, and I'm like, hey, can you just grab this light and just paint the side of their face? And they're like, what? It's a part of my vocabulary. And then the other thing that I learned is analysis is the death of creativity. If you continue to analyze something as you're doing it, you will kill your creativity. Mm-hmm. And then last thing is, I love this. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but I do have it written down. Richard Ebert had a great quote where he says, the muse visits during the act of creation. Don't wait for her. So it's like if you're waiting for inspiration, you're never going to find it. Notice it. You're probably not going to find it.
Right.
But if you begin that moment of beginning, something happens that then creativity comes behind it, almost like it honors you, rewards you for beginning.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know how many times I'll be at a wedding and I think I'm about to pose somebody, and then all of a sudden they move just in the right way where it's already done. I don't have to, oh my gosh, hold it right there. I love it. Or just when you go out and shoot nature or landscapes, you go out looking for whatever comes at you, and you might have some ideas in mind, but then all of a sudden the clouds open up and you need to turn just a little, and boom, there's the shot. So you can't. You can put up a lot of planning into things, and it's totally worthwhile to do so. But once you get there, that's when it's going to start. Sparks are flying because you put up the camera and you're in the zone. I mean, that's how we work. We start framing our life around us through the viewfinder. It ends up getting that much easier to see because we see as photographers, and that's what we do.
Agreed.
So I'm a little more excited on this question here, just given your social media expertise. But do you have one app or internet resource that you think Photo World could benefit from knowing about?
One app? Well, sure. Our community. So I would say this. Okay, so first of all, I'll do a non-selfish plug. Okay? So
you can plug all you want. I don't mind.
Okay. My non-selfish plug is I really do think I think Pixel Pet does a great job in terms of their content. I find myself liking or sharing a lot of their work. I think Joanne Carter does a great job at the App Whisperer. If you're into mobile photography, she does a fantastic job. And then I'm blanking on his name, a photo editor. What is it? Photoeditor.com. He does great work. And all of those are fantastic resources on different levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other one that I would really say is, and I know this sounds like a selfish plug, but it's really not meant to be. I would tell you, even if I wasn't doing it, I would be involved in it. Our JJ community on Instagram is really unbelievable. You know, there is, and that was the thing that really blew me away about mobile photography, is it allowed people that never saw themselves as creatives, not as photographers, as creatives and as storytellers, the opportunity to create visuals, photos, artwork, and gave them a voice that they never otherwise would have had. And the talent level of images that I see every day sincerely blows me away. And, you know, so if you're following us there, you know, it's basically a self-curated, not self-curated, but it's this curated feed of amazing photos. So you're constantly seeing, you know, the best of the best that's out on Instagram, and you can't help but be inspired when you see good photography done, you know, at an exceptional level. It's very inspiring, and that's going to get into your own DNA.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they always say, it's like, you know, steal from, and I'm not saying these people are masters, but steal from the masters, you know, be influenced by them, you know, and that'll be in your psyche someplace, somewhere, when you're in front of your next subject or you're shooting, you know, it's back there, and it'll inform and affect how you approach your work, because you've been studying, you've been looking, and studying sounds like effort,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just visual education.
Maybe it's my education side where, you know, teaching and trying to get my students inspired rather than speaking to them, because I can dish out information all day long. But I mean, heck, I got a podcast. But, you know, it's so much easier to tell them, go out and look. Just look. There's so much done out there. You don't have to imitate or copy, but look and start seeing light differently, seeing all the different ideas out there, because there's a ton of stuff. And I think it's, like you said, it becomes subconscious. It's really easy to kind of just fill up your memory bank, not even thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, you have this idea, and it might have been inspired from something else you saw. And then it becomes original at that point, you know? So I think that's awesome. So we're about to wrap it up here for our interview today. But before we go, could you please share with Photo World one parting piece of guidance, and then the best way that we can reach you, whether it be your website or some sort of social media, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. So parting advice, right? Yeah, here's what I would say. And maybe this goes against what you want, but I think I'd say this. I don't know. Don't think of yourself as just a photographer anymore. I think the term photographer is always going to be there, but what that means is going to change. See yourself as a storyteller, and you are telling stories with still images, or you're telling stories with video, or you're telling a story with your words in conjunction with your video and your picture. You know, I don't think in today's market you can be a single platform storyteller.
Right.
You've got to be a multi-tiered storyteller. And that's what I would tell you to do. Like, if you're feeling, you know, like, I'm not a very good writer, just, again, go back to the thing. Just keep writing. Not a good video person. Just shoot, cut. And that'll really take you forward. And then the best way to reach me is I'm probably most active on Instagram. So that's my username there is at Kevin Kuster, Kuster. But I also, like I said, curate and run the JJ community. So that's at JJ community on Instagram. But you can always, drop me an email. I'm very accessible, so you can always, my personal email where you can see more of my professional work is www.kevinkuster.com.
Very nice. And if Photo World can't find you for whatever reason, just pulling these off the episode today, we will have everything, including all your social links that you have on your website, in one place on Taking Talk Pics in your show notes page, and the resources that we discussed. Photo World, head over there and type in Kevin. His show notes will pop right up, and you'll have everything right there to get connected. But Kevin, I cannot thank you enough for your time today and sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you, and happy shooting.
Thanks. Have a good day.
World, I hope you're enjoying the show, and I hope you continue to enjoy the show. Please let me know with comments, feedback. Connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. It's available, and I want this to be a community of you, Photo World, getting involved and sharing what you want out of the show. So please do not hesitate to put that out there. Hit up our Facebook page. Let us know what you want to hear on the show. If you have ideas about who should be on the show, we have that option on our contact page over at takingtalkpics.com. By the way, takingtalkpics.com underwent a huge revision. It looks awesome now. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. So I'm so excited to announce the new website. Please take a look and, get involved. Take a look at our photographers that we've featured and connect with them. Follow their work. They are inspirations to me, and I hope they inspire you as well. Thank you, and happy shooting.